Okay, now this is Wednesday. We're recording this, so this is Wednesday, September 18th. If this airs on Friday and there's news coming out on Thursday or Friday morning that I don't have in here, guess what? It's going to have to be on the next round of video. So um, let's begin. All right, Snowline had absolutely stupendous results. This is an infill hole, 6 grams over 101 meters. You don't see holes like this every day. And that was within, that's right up the top of the hole, but it's within a much broader interval, 4.1 grams over 244.9 meters. That is jaw dropping. It's one of the best holes they've had to date. It does tell us that that high grade component, the core that's right at grassroots effectively, is is looking very robust. In fact, this might even help the grade in the model in that area. This particular drill hole came out at 992 gram meter, a phenomenal result. The other hole that you see listed there, number 80, is a bit on the margin of the deposit, but still a very, very solid result. 485 meters, a little under a gram per ton. And it does have a higher grade interval in there, 177 meters and 1.5 grams. All right, so this is just one of these rare unicorn deposits that has remarkable continuity and can deliver results like this. All right, let's go to the next slide and talk about it. Okay, so the hole that's the topic of or the headline of that news release is right there in the center. I don't have a 3D model this week. I had to trim up my slides because there's just so many things to update. So I'm going to have to erase through these things. Look, hole number 78, you can see is actually drilled generally in the opposite direction. So it's drilled towards the northeast compared to most of the holes, not all of them, but most of the holes. And I think it gives us a real test. It's like a real test of that high grade component up at the top of the hole. We're going to look at it in cross section next. Go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, you can see the hole. It's going the opposite direction from all the rest of those holes. All of the rest of those holes, and there are a few holes on this image that have some assays coming back, so we're going to see some more numbers out of the company. But all the rest of the holes in this image, at least, I think, all go to the opposite direction. Okay, so hole 78 really gives us that solid test of that high grade component. And it really actually gives me a lot of comfort because the veining, albeit steep, tends to dip back towards towards the right hand side at a steep angle. And because of that, it's like, well, are we going to see the same values from one hole to the next? This demonstrates remarkable continuity. It's very seldom that you see such a continuous run of gold or, effectively exactly the same high grade component replicated in holes going different directions in a deposit like this. There's almost always some variance. Not in this case. This thing is just remarkable. We've talked about a bowl of soup. This thing seems to be a big bowl of soup. It's very uniform in most regards in terms of its grade. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the company did see a lot of visible gold in that particular hole. What does that mean? Gravity gold recovery. Okay, so gravity will recover a lot of gold out of this system. You can see gold such as this, especially this coarse size, and I've talked about this in recent videos, should be readily recoverable in a gravity circuit. It is going to be free milling. It's not locked up in sulfide or something weird, guys. This is what they're trying to tell you with these images is this is free gold particles that should be readily, recoverable in a mill. Okay, very, very good. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now they had some news out of a couple of other stories. Okay, this target here, and I just realized the label that had the name on it got chopped off, I think, towards the bottom. But I believe it's like the Marguerite property or something like this. This is another target. Hasn't been drilled yet, but it is a new target on their ground, Snowline's ground. So it's yet another reduced intrusive target. In this case, the granodiorite kind of has an elongate shape. You can see that kind of olive colored lozenge shape in the middle of the image there. This Granodiorite battery is a monster. Okay, it's about 1.5 kilometers long, and it's about 300 or 400 meters wide, just at surface there. Look at the numbers they're getting. They're even getting numbers off in the little subordinate dike up to the north there. But you've got a remarkable string of nice rock chips. These are not soils or some airy fairy thing. This is actual rock chip data off a brand new discovery. Do we think that looks like something that might be of interest? Heck yes. This is another reduced intrusive discovery. Will they drill it this year? Hope so, but we'll see. Go to the next slide. And I think the same thing might have happened here. Sorry, the labels got cut off at the bottom. I didn't center the photos quite right. This is up in the Rogue property, a new target. It is an epizonal, basically an orogenic system that's very, very shallow. It's like the Jupiter system. They got some good numbers. They did some prospecting up in the field. And again, these are rock chip samples. They're seeing quartz, buggy quartz, which says shallow, that has pretty good assays, 4.31 gram per ton and 6.11 in outcrop. So, and the target is long. It's at 1.3 kilometers long from northwest to southeast. I think this is very encouraging. It tells me that there's a lot more going on up at Rogue. Do not forget, there's two discrete types of deposits at Snowline. We have not only the reduced intrusives, which are like Valley, which are just enormous. We have these amazing shallow level orogenic systems, epizonal orogenic systems like Jupiter and such that are more structurally controlled, perhaps not directly related to an intrusive, more related to metamorphic fluids and stuff, but really great targets in their own right. All right, let's go to the next slide. We got to put our skates on because we got a lot to talk about today. Okay, Goliath had yet another update. I think it was early in the month. It was around September 3rd or so. They talked about seeing concentrations of gold. In fact, this particular drill hole has one of the highest concentrations. I know it's kind of hard to see, but that middle image of core, all those little red polka dots that you see there, those are individual discrete grains of visible gold in core. So that's one of the highest concentrations they've seen to date. This is at the Sherbet target, but I believe it's one of the lower lodes. But these are very remarkable results. The company keeps putting out. Still waiting on assays, but I'm very encouraged by this, and I'm very optimistic. Now, one thing I noticed about this is that the mineralogy of this, which I think is down at the Bonanza level of the system, Bonanza lode, is a little bit different. It's not your typical galena, sphalerite kind of assemblage, sulfide assemblage with the gold. In this case, I'm seeing darkness, which looks like a mineral called actinolite, maybe a bit higher temperature, but I'm also seeing maybe some brassy stuff in there that looks like probably pyrrhotite is my guess. So we're seeing a little bit different flavor of gold mineralization. In fact, some of those little silver flecks you see in the close-up images might even be bismuth minerals and stuff, which, what does this mean? What is this crazy geologist saying? It simply means this mineralization is probably closer to the actual mineral source, like the intrusion or whatever that kicked off this gold. It's probably getting closer to the actual origin of the fluids. That can often be a good thing because it says, hey, maybe we're in a main conduit within the system of fractures in the ground that became mineralized, and to me that's very encouraging in its own right. Note the company is targeting 36,000 meters. I think at this point, which is about 2 weeks after this news release was released, they're starting to ramp down. The fall is here. The winter is going to come very soon. I think they were at 8 rigs. I think they're winding back down to maybe 6 or 5 rigs, and then probably within a week or two, they'll have to be off the mountain because the snow will fly. They'll have to do a lot of logging. I think they're behind in logging core. They try to drill as many holes as they can during the warm season, and then they have to log them probably well into October is my guess. But there should be a heap of news coming forthwith. Let's go to the next slide. One more thing I thought I would throw up. They've done a really good job with this imagery now, showing the structures that they're now seeing. If you think back to the first days at SureBet, we had the one structure, and we were very excited about that. That's that structure up at the top. Look at this thing now, and these are well positioned on the map. They're defined by drilling. These are things you can hang your hat on. We have multiple structures now, and you can see the Bonanza Lode, which is likely the one that VG was in, actually dips in a somewhat different direction than the SureBet above. That's interesting in its own right. Okay, don't know what that means exactly yet, but I think that's telling us something. And notice they have more lodes down there at depth as well that they've hit in recent deep drilling. All right, like lots of really good news. This is the year of discovery for Goliath. Go to the next slide. Okay, here we have again boring. Gold everywhere. Just pictures of gold. I mean, everybody's getting absolutely bored of seeing this kind of stuff. Not really. No, of course not. Okay, Sitka announced remarkable drill hole here. It's the deepest hole ever, 680 meters below surface, or down hole below surface. This thing had a lot of visible gold evident in the core. They talk about it in the news release. Read the details if you want. Here's some pictures. This looks a lot like Valley. Notice the blobs of gold, very similar scale of gold particles in many cases. And then you see the gray, silvery gray minerals around, which are bismuth and tellurium sulfides, most likely, that are typical of a reduced intrusion. Again, this is free milling stuff, guys. This is the kind of stuff that should be recoverable in a conventional gold mill, gravity, CIL, whatever. This is the kind of stuff that is very, very friendly to treat in milling operations. Okay, go to the next slide. Now, this image shows you in plan view where that hole is. It's number 68. Notice it was colored over here and it was drilled eastward. Okay, so the bottom of the hole is where all those stars are collected on the east end of that yellow line. That's at depth. Okay, now notice they also have a hole in progress. I don't think they would highlight that one in green unless they were kind of excited about it. Okay, but think about it. That's another mega hole that goes down very, very deep. And yeah, what might they see out of that? Well, we'll probably know pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if they have some more news about visuals from that hole. And don't forget, we have lots of assays coming too. Basically, they have probably a dozen holes or so that are in the lab that have been drilled in the lab for assay. So we have a lot of news coming from the company. Let's look at this thing in cross section real quick. Go to the next slide. You can see the drill hole. This is kind of that dream hole I talked about way back in, I don't know, late last year, I think, when we first kind of picked up on the possibility of high grade at Sitka. I think it was in September, October, maybe, of last year. And I talked about how, hey, maybe they should drill a deep hole to see what's happening at depth down in that granite, down what's going on down there. Okay, and guess what? They got the hole down there, and guess what? There's a lot of VG in this thing. Is it done yet? No, this has got a lot of potential for growth. I talked about this, showed a 3D model in a recent video. What they're seeing here is an enormous volume of rock at depth that remains part of this target that could produce more results like this. And to give you a sense of scale, we're talking about maybe a few kilometers, like 2 or 3 kilometers from this area, this I think it's called Blackjack area, down to some of the new targets they have on the ground they picked up from Victoria recently. All right, so this is a very large-scale gold target, and these results this year, I think, are going to show us that this could be a world-class, potentially world-class, meaning a deposit that major mining companies would be very interested in owning at some point. All right, let's go to the next slide. Lots of news. Western Alaska put out news. A lot of people email me and said, what do you make of this? It's a narrow interval. Okay, but Western Alaska talked about hitting CRD mineralization, albeit only 1.15 meters. But look at the grades on this stuff. 687 grams silver, huge lead, 33 lead, zinc. I think there's some zinc and whatnot in there too. And then they had another interval too, a little bit lower grade, but still interesting, like 3 meters and a bit, just under 100 grams silver, but combined about 6.5% lead zinc. Okay, this is important. This is super important. I've talked about, like Peter McGaw's model for CRDs, where they're the skeletal hand. If you think about each finger being, a potential conduit or channel for mineralization, as soon as you get around one of these phalanges, you start to see numbers like this. Okay, so why is this important? Go to the next slide. First of all, this is a plan view of the property area. Now, the porphyry that drove all of this is presumed to be kind of down here off the south edge of the map somewhere. And all of this CRD mineralization is highlighted in the green area. So we know Illinois Creek has some, and we know Water Pump Creek, way up in the north, upper right there, has great CRD, high grade CRD mineralization. Now, the goal of the company this year was to find continuity between those two. They don't have to drill the thing out, but they had to demonstrate there's mineralization between Water Pump Creek and Illinois Creek. That's a huge distance. That's like 6 or 7 kilometers between Illinois Creek Mine and Water Pump Creek. Okay, if they tag CRD in the middle there, guess what? They've basically demonstrated that there's more, phalanges to be drilled here. This is a discovery hole, in my view, albeit a narrow discovery. Now, the company is meticulous about putting geology to their drilling, so they do a great job showing cross. Go to the next slide. First of all, I got to show you the core. It's just super exciting to see. That's basically solid metal. It's lead, silver, and zinc in core. It looks very much like the CRD mineralization up at Water Pump Creek. And here we are 2 or 3 kilometers to the southwest. This, in my view, is a brand new discovery. It looks and smells just like Water Pump Creek. So that mineralization almost certainly formed from the same ore forming fluids that formed Water Pump Creek and Illinois Creek 7 kilometers from one another. Here we are right in between it. Now we have proof. We have proof that there is more system here to explore. Go to the next slide. Now, this cross section, clearly when they hit this is that was in hole 5, by the way. Okay, and hole 5 is this one over here on the right-hand side. It's going back towards the left as it goes deeper. There's another hole in there, hole 12, and it's kind of towards the middle of the image. Hole 12, they also saw some visuals. Notice it doesn't go down quite as deep. Man, I wish it did. I'd love to know what's a little bit deeper. Don't know what happened there. Maybe they're still drilling. I don't quite follow from the news release exactly what happened to that hole, but at least they've tagged this silver, lead, zinc zone in hole 5. So we know there's another system down there, and the purple shows you what's there. Now, what's down dip from that? What's to the right? To the left up dip. Don't know yet, but they need to do more drilling in this area, because somewhere around here, you're going to get right into a phalange. You're going to get right into the guts of this thing. You're going to see some numbers like we saw out of Water Pump Creek, most likely. All right, so some thicknesses, more thick intercepts, very high grade is my view. All right, so let's go to the next slide. This is exciting stuff. Okay, Magotes had 2 news releases over the past 2 weeks. One was about some drill holes. Remember, they got 3 holes done. 2 of them reached target depth. 1 of them failed to reach target depth. I'm not going to talk about the 3rd hole. I'm going to talk about the 2 that they drilled. Okay, everybody watching this video, listen closely. Okay, if you don't understand, it takes maybe 20, 25 drill holes in a porphyry target to make a discovery. I just wouldn't if you think you'd make discovery in 2 or 3 holes, just no. Geologists seldom do that. Okay, these are big targets, but they also are big areas that you have to explore. You have to drill 20, 25 holes. I've had discussions with Sergei Dyakov, the best porphyry explorer in the world, about what he thinks is the average number. He says 24 holes. We're talking 2 holes here. Everybody's like, oh gosh, they didn't hit that. I'm going to sell my stock, move on. That's crazy. Look at where they are. Look at this map on the right-hand side. That deposit up in green at the top of that image just sold for over $4 billion. Okay, that's Philo. Philo sold to Lundin and BHP. It's a joint venture purchase. Notice it's open at the south end. It's very funny that every time you see Philo, they have this curious little open sign on their deposit at the south end. And maybe that's for a reason. They're not explaining to most folk. But maybe that deposit might accidentally come down. Gee, what do you think? Onto Magote's ground, even. Think about that for a minute. It has to be drilled. I'm not saying it's proof yet, but I find that very interesting. So the red targets, those are Magotes, right? We're going to see what they come up with. They tested two of them, and they actually got some pretty interesting results. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is, these guys put data out there for people to chew on. You basically have to read their news release. You have to take an entire Sunday to digest one news release. Steve Nano loves to make beautiful images, albeit sometimes they're confusing for folks, but I think they do convey a lot of information. Okay, and you can see the drill holes, like up in there in the upper one. Okay, we have the Cruz del Sur target, and you can see where that drill hole is. That's the first one these guys have drilled, and they did hit metal values, significant metal values. But look at the rest of the cross section here. Have they tested everything? No, they haven't. They've drilled one hole, and they had some pretty significant numbers. Not ore grades, not bonanza like, hey, let's throw our hands in the air and say we're rich kind of stuff. But they found good rock, good alteration, and significant anomalous metal values. All right. So, yeah, let's be a little more patient. We're on hole one. Okay, go to the next slide. And then here's hole two. Okay, it's two views of the same hole. The upper one, it's that big long hole that goes down deepest there. And then in the bottom section, you can see it right away there. It's that hole that goes. They hit good values of anomalous metals up at the top. They hit really good values of anomalous metals down at the bottom. And the bottom intercept actually is in a quartz diorite rock. It's basically in porphyry that resembles some of the rocks we see northward towards Philo. Okay, so do I consider this a discovery? It's not a discovery hole in terms of potential economic values like we see at Philo or something. But in terms of geology, there's a long run here of 0.1x% copper and anomalous gold and stuff. This in Mali too. This smells a lot like early stage exploration success in terms of defining a very large volume and target of anomalous metal, okay, in the ground. And you can see from the geophysical expression, there's lots more to test. In fact, that Camino target over there on the right is one of my favorite, okay? Now, they put out another news release. Go to the next slide. Where they talk about basically acquiring a huge amount of data across the properties. They were able to integrate the data with their previous data. You can see down here in the lower left, two images. One is Magnetic's pre-data acquisition. When they got the additional data, look at that. It bolts right together, and you can see a much clearer picture. Notice the magnetism at the north end of the property. Guess what? You remember I said that up just above that is Philo? You think there might be a connection here? Maybe. Does it look like it might come straight down onto Magote's ground? That looks interesting. There's a good case to be made. We need to explore this. Okay, holes 3 through 22 or what through 24 or whatever it's going to take to find. That's what's coming. Okay, the company has plans. It's summer, or it's starting to get warmer. Winter is over down there. This is spring in this location. It will get warmer. They'll be able to drill soon. Hold on to your shorts. Let's watch this story unfold. Okay, go to the next slide. All right, El Oro. El Oro has decided to advance the Isca Isca project in several different ways. They put out a news release sometime last week. One of the ways they're going to do it is do some more infill drilling around the Santa Barbara area. I think they've talked about 5,000 meters of drilling. and that's to infill in the higher grade core of this. I've got on the right hand side the plan view of the additional holes they want to drill, as well on the left side over here the cross sectional view. This is one of the highest grade parts of the system in terms of silver and zinc and lead, but also in places tin. Okay, there's considerable tin. Now, in addition to the drilling, the guys would like to do some pilot work, and that includes, when I say pilot, I'm talking exploration level, digging holes in the ground kind of stuff, and maybe taking rock and testing it for metallurgical reasons and whatnot. But they're going to put an adit down in the Santa Barbara area and try to get exposure into the ground. So they're going to dig down and try to get exposure. And they might even try test processing some of this material uh, elsewhere around Bolivia. There's quite a few mills and stuff they could put it through. So the company has ambition to kind of advance this project in this very tough market. Difficult to be aggressive with a project like this when capital is limited in the mining space right now. But these guys have a plan, and I'd like to see them follow through, especially this drilling. This drilling looks important to me. Okay, go to the next slide. There we go. Tectonic. They like to get started late in the season, but on September 11th, they announced they're going to start their drill program at the Flat Gold Project in Alaska. This is about when they started last year, almost the very same day. It is a bit wet in August. I got to say, in this location, it's really tough to get started until September. There's a bit of a dry window usually not always, but from about early September until early November, there's about 2 good months. So it is far up north. It's Western Alaska, but in this particular area, the temperatures are high enough. Like, we're not in deep winter by November. They're high enough in there to drill, basically to do some work. Okay, so we're going to see what the company comes up with. What are they going to test this year? Go to the next slide. Look, the news release spells out in great detail the targets they're going to test. I took this image out of their presentation deck to show you the property. And then what I did over here is I took yellow stars and I put boink, 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 4 stars on the map where these guys plan to drill. They have new targets. Okay. They will do drilling at Chicken Mountain, which is where they drilled last year, and that's where most of the historic drilling is. But they also they want to drill this Adit Happy A-H target, which is towards the north and needs some drilling. They think there's a structural corridor in there with some higher grades. Really interested to see what they come up with there. They also want to target that Alpha Basin or Alpha Bowl area, AB, which is basically where some of the biggest amounts of placer gold came off, that kind of red sinuous line or pink line that goes up. That's the creek with the placer mining. Okay, so that AB is a really robust target that's virtually no drilling. Okay, but it's got a lot of gold coming out of that basin. And then up at the top, they got Golden Apex. That's another area where there's a pointed watershed, points to gold in that area. There was a little historic drilling, says there is good good gold values and over significant intercepts in there. In fact, some of the higher grade that's been encountered on the property is from that area. And they're going to drill that target too. So we have 4 different kicks at the can here to see what they come up with. The goal of the company is not to drill out an ore body this year. It's to show the market that this property, this vast property at Flat, has numerous reduced intrusive type targets, any of which could result in starter mine or starter pits for a company like Tectonic. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, Juggernaut announced 2, and I don't have all the photos. It would have taken me hours to put all the photos together, but I can tell you this. I went over to the Colorado School of Mines. They had a little conference after Beaver Creek, and I got to see the core firsthand. Similar to last year, they have visuals from their 2 drill projects. One is the Midas targets, a VMS target like SK Creek, and then one of them is the Bingo property, which is kind of actually over by Sherbet. It's not too far. It's west of Sherbet, but it's of the same ilk as Sherbet, we'll say. And of all of the drill holes they drilled this year, pretty consistent hits at Midas of sulfide mineralization. And they expanded the program over a longer strike, so 700-meter strike. Interesting chalcopyrite in many of the drill holes. I don't know what it's going to run just yet. We'll have to see, but fingers crossed. Maybe we'll see some really good numbers this year over a significant, over multiple holes in a significant strike. Okay, but this one at Bingo, actually, I looked at some of the core there. Very interesting stuff. I'm becoming more and more of a believer that Bingo looks a heck of a lot like a Sherbet. It's a bit higher in altitude, I think, and it's a bit more remote. I mean, it's just a little bit harder to get to from Kitsault, say. But it's starting to shape up a lot like a Sherbet type of discovery. In other words, the mineralogy looks like Sherbet. It looks like it might be related to an intrusion at depth of that ilk. Okay, so it's high gold, high, strong silver values in places, but also strong base metals and stuff. Be very interesting. And they were very successful in hitting mineralization in most or perhaps all of the holes they drilled here. And over significant widths too, which is really, they smell like the widths of Sherbet. So I'm very hopeful we'll see some good numbers there. And by the way, last year, that property, Bingo, is what generated the highest values for the company. Go to the next slide. Okay, Yukon Metals got out in the field and got some work done before winter fell here. Remember, Yukon Metals is basically the collection of base metal projects that the Berdahl family. Remember, Berdahls are the ones that put the projects in the snowline. Okay, so they're really good at prospecting. Dad, Ron Berdahl, son, Scott Berdahl, there's a brother. They all do a great job of prospecting. They identify targets. Snowline has the gold. Yukon Metals has the base metal targets. And they got out and did some work on the ground. And they got some really interesting results out of two of the properties. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the two news releases that are highlighted in the lower right corner. Go to the next slide. So just for reference, this map shows you all of the properties that are scattered about the Yukon that Yukon Metals has. And so this gives you a reference point. Star River is in there. I can't see the other one. My eyes are terrible. It's really hard to read this for some reason. Anyway, I'm going to talk about two of these, including Star River, which I think is next. Go to the next slide. The Birch Project first. Okay, so the Birch Project, they did soils across the target area that Ron had showed them and picked out. He said, here, guys, you got to do soils across this target. And they've developed, demonstrated a really robust gold, copper, anomalous, both metals are anomalous in this banana-shaped area here over a pretty good strike, like a few hundred meters, almost a kilometer long. Now, this is interpreted to be a skarn system, a skarn copper-gold system that's perhaps adjacent to an intrusion. They're not targeting a porphyry per se as of yet. Ron told me personally, he said this looks like a skarn target, and they've defined something that they can likely drill. I think they need to do a bit more work in terms of mapping before they stick a drill bit in the ground here. But this is really encouraging start. Very robust soil anomaly, both copper and gold. Let's go to the next slide. And then there we go, Star River. Here, they got rock chip samples over a pretty broad area that are remarkable. Okay, there's one sample, and they don't have all the assays back. By the way, they have a bunch of samples that are still being assayed, but they got some bonanza grade silver. Look at that, over 10,000 gram per ton silver. So that's over 1% silver in that sample on the left. You can see some of the other numbers there, 4,200 grams, and then 1,290 grams on the right. Okay, there's a little sniff of gold with these, 0.x gram, whatever. But this is really a silver play. And one of the things that caught my eye was the real fine-grained nature of the galena, that bluish, sparkly stuff that you see in each sample photograph is galena, which is lead sulfide. Usually when you see fine-grained galena, it's very high in silver. And where have I seen that before? Well, there's a little mine in the Yukon known as Keno Hill, okay, where you see high-grade silver that's in association with very fine-grained galena like you see in these photographs, hosted in similar rocks, okay, and it's not that far away in all reality. So what is this? To me, it smells like early days for maybe a Keno type target or something like that. I don't know for sure. I'd love to get up there next year and actually see it for myself on the ground. But that just smells like a Keno type target. What does that mean? Well, look, they got to do some more work. They probably need to do soils and some mapping and some other work before they go drilling. I'd hate to see them drill this thing prematurely. Sometimes you think, oh, wow, these numbers are great. We can just swing a drill around and start drilling and come up with great drill results. You know what? It's usually good to do a little bit more work, particularly soils, like we saw in the previous image, where it defines your target better. So when you drill, you know you're drilling the best area, the best part of the target. This is early days. Hopefully they did some more of that kind of work, maybe soils or something. But still good results. Good results. Let's go to the next slide. And by the way, by doing this early stage work, they saved money. Okay, they didn't run out there and start drilling immediately and blow their bank account. They did. They're trying to do good science before they come in to drill next year. Okay, PJX. This is a story about looking for a big SEDEX, sedimentary exhalative based metal system. I realize it's going long, guys. Bear with me. It's a lot of news. Sorry. Anyway, this project is not very far from Sullivan. In fact, it's just a few kilometers, like 20 kilometers from Sullivan, which is one of the biggest SEDEX deposits on Earth. And they didn't hit a home run right yet, okay, the early days, but they hit sulfide, breccias, and stockwork. So sulfide mineralization, mainly iron sulfide, so pyrite and pyrrhotite, like you see in the photograph here. That looks like it might be of the vent fascia. What does that mean? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a cross-sectional view of Sullivan, and you can see that it's like a VMS where you have a feeder system coming up from below. That's all that black hackly looking stuff. And then when the fluids came out and they spilled out on the seafloor, they produced the more bedded mineralization, which includes the lead, zinc, and silver stuff. Okay, well, what's the company trying to say? They're trying to say, I put a little blue circles on here. They're trying to say they have like vent facies, perhaps like we see in the right or left-hand side blue circle, or maybe downslope facies even, like we see in the right-hand blue circle. But they're not saying they've hit the mothership yet. They still have a pretty good bank account, and they're still drilling. Let's see what they come up with. Again, deposits aren't found instantaneously. Usually it takes geologists a few swings at the bat to make a discovery. But we know they have really good rock samples across the property, this target area, that have very high zinc, silver, and lead. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Cantex put out an update on the drilling. And remember, they started drilling again just a few weeks ago. I think they're trying to get some holes in before the snow flies. This is up in the Yukon, another SEDEX target. So this is big scale targets. These are the kind that I like. I like to think about, finding tens of millions of tons, say, or 100+ million ton SEDEX deposit. And when a company comes to us and says, hey, this is the kind of target we have, I get interested. I'm not saying they found it yet. I'm just saying that that's the kind of target I like. Okay. And these guys have drilled some holes on the east end of the trail of zones that they've defined to date. And they've extended the main zone by another 250. I think it's a few hundred meters extension. But now the total length of the system they've defined is 2.6 kilometers long of the silver, lead, zinc. Now, the holes that they've drilled right now don't have assays. These are just visuals. The company is very sparing with their details. But in the next section, go to the next slide, you'll see they have a cross-section here that simply shows mineralized intervals that they've interpreted, presumably where they're seeing lead, zinc, silver styles of sulfide mineralization. And it's got some continuity to it, okay? So we'll have to stay tuned for assays, but it sounds encouraging.